Good evening. My name is Eric Moore. This is the Concord Town Meeting Study Committee meeting of April 7th, 2025. The time is 7 o'clock. Welcome to our meeting. We're still rolling in, but we have a quorum, so I'm going to start. Alice Kaufman, thank you for bringing the clerk tonight. I'll start with roll. Keith Bergman, please.
Present.
Keith, all right. Keith, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Present.
Cool, thank you. Also online, Chase Thompson, please.
Here.
Thank you, Chase. Moving to the room. I do not see Katie Bresnick. Kristen Haggard, welcome. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alice Kaufman, please.
Here.
Thank you. Parashar Patel. Here. Thank you. Bill Swain, not here yet. Not online. Eric Moore present, and Eric Van Loon present. All right. Oh, cool. Welcome, Katie. Katie Bresnick is joined as well. Thank you. So tonight's agenda, public comment where we have it. Approve available minutes, and tonight is the special subcommittee minutes approval process, and I'll need some help. You know, like I know what to do. And the real topic tonight is the reviewing of version 3 of the draft committee report. We'll have a lot of discussion on that. I'll say about item 4, what to present at the select board town meeting hearing. Eric Van Loon is agreed to present the article coming from us, so to speak. And I think, you know, where you need more information tonight, speak up so that we make sure we address your needs. Yeah, thank you.
I'll need probably technical help with the PowerPoint, that format,
Sure.
form.
I'll send
Sure,
it
sure.
to you. If
Yeah.
you need any help.
Send them a link,
Oh, yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right, but just make sure we address what your needs are, Eric. So public comment. Any folks from the public seeking to, please?
Want to speak here or where would you want me to speak?
Where can you?
You should be able to hear him from there.
Okay. Thank you, Ned Perry.
My name is Ned Perry. I live at 362 Bedford Street. This committee has held more than 30 meetings over the last year. Several of your meetings were all in person. However, the vast majority of your meetings have been hybrid, causing delays in communications and lacking the in-person relationships that usually develop in such committees. I recommend that your report reference that you've been doing hybrid meetings. Most study committee reports to our town are succinct, have one-page summaries, and lead with the recommendations that may be implemented immediately, followed by the recommendations that will take some time to develop and implement. Leading with your recommendation that the select board seek a home rule petition authorizing a hybrid town meeting appears to me to be unfortunate. As you know, in large part due to COVID, representative town meetings have been permitted to use remote voting for the last several years. 2 or 3 RTMs have utilized the technology and like it. However, other RTMs who've been used remote voting have found it to be totally changed the character and community building purposes of their town meetings, and have declared that they have no interest in holding any town meetings in a hybrid form in the future. Reading reports from these towns, I now feel that remote voting is not a constructive way to improve our town meeting. And in fact, since one of the focal points is trying to improve the experience of town meeting, remote voting would be moving in the opposite direction. During your discussions and in your report, you have failed to consider making recommendations that the town moderator look at ways that the moderator may make our town meeting quicker and more enjoyable. Last weekend, I attended a town meeting where the moderator presented the consent agenda in 4 minutes, and the vote was completed in under 1 minute, meaning a total of 5 minutes. This is about 30 minutes shorter than has been used in our Concord town meeting for the last 3 or 4 years. That moderator also used a gavel and made sure that the presentations and the questions moved succinctly. Finally, I will simply say that the draft committee report in front of you this evening is one of the worst documents I've seen in the public domain in Concord. Like many materials presented to your 30-minute, the 2-year 30 meetings. The draft is unfocused, repeats itself, and is so long that very few members of the public will take time to read it, and let alone try to digest it and implement it. Thank you for your time.
Good, Ned, thank you, thank you. Just one quick follow-up. The towns that are representative town meeting that are using our hybrid tech, what are those towns? How would we follow up and understanding more about their experience?
I would talk to the town moderator and ask her to give you comments from the RTM's towns that have used it and see what they
Okay,
say.
good,
She has access to them and can provide this to you.
super, thank you. Seeing no one else from the public, we're gonna move forward, thank you. So minutes, we have Chase's minutes from our November 25th, 2024 meeting to approve. We have a quorum, I'll make a motion to, I get this wrong all the time. Make a motion to approve the minutes, can I get a second, and we'll go into discussion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from November 25th,
Thank you.
2024.
A second, anybody?
Second.
Good, any discussion about those minutes? Kristen Haggerty, please.
Is the date on that correct? I thought the date on the minutes themselves said the 24th instead of the 25th.
This,
Okay.
And I was present at that meeting.
yeah,
Okay.
On the 25th or the 24th?
yeah. Yeah, my apologies, Kristen, it's probably a mistake.
I'll take care of the correction.
Okay, cool, so it's the 24th, good, thank you. We still have 2 sets of minutes from the committee outstanding, February 25th, Phil, and March 25th, Eric Moore. Now,
Excuse me, I'm sorry, did we just, it is the 25th.
Yeah.
Because the 24th is a
Yeah,
Sunday.
I think she's
Yeah,
gonna
I think
change
it's on the document, so I'm gonna make sure it's matched up everywhere.
okay, oh, we haven't voted, I'm sorry. Let's go through and approve the minutes from November 25th, 2024, by Chase Thompson. I'll just do a roll call starting online. Keith Bergman, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Chase Thompson, please.
Aye.
Alice Kaufman, please.
Aye.
Eric Van Loon, please. Kristen Haggerty, please.
Aye.
Phil Swain, please.
Yes,
Parashar Patel, please.
Aye.
Eric Moore. Aye.
Katie, you think-
Oh, I'm sorry, Katie. And Katie
Aye.
Bresnick.
Also
Thank
aye.
you. Okay, good, thank you. So those are approved unanimously. What do we need to do to?
We'll call this subcommittee meeting to order.
Okay, at this point, I'm gonna interrupt our meeting and call the engagement subcommittee meeting to order. And then we'll take roll for that. Kristen Haggerty for the engagement subcommittee,
Here,
Alice Kaufman,
Yes.
Eric Moore present, Parashar Patel,
Here.
and Chase Thompson, please.
Here.
I'd like a motion to approve the minutes from the December 19th, 2024 meeting of the engagement subcommittee.
I think it's the 17th. Which the minutes say correctly.
Okay. Okay, so, yeah,
Motion to approve the minutes from December 17th, 2024.
second, please.
Second.
Great, thank you. We'll just do a roll call. Kristen Haggerty, please.
Yes,
Alice Kaufman, please. Eric Moore, aye. Parashar Patel,
Yeah.
thank you. And Chase Thompson, please.
Aye.
Great, thank you. So, the engagement subcommittee minutes from the 17th are approved. We'll now close the engagement subcommittee meeting and back to our regularly scheduled meeting. Good, thank you. Okay, so tonight, really focusing on the report, we've got the select board hearing. That I got the date wrong too. We've got the select board hearing on the 15th. No, it's the
No,
14th. It's the 14th. Oh my God. The select board hearing on the 14th. You'd say the report's not focused, right? So, that's the home rule petition, Article 27, and Eric, you're gonna drive with that. We've got a meeting on the 22nd. I think, that's really gonna be about making sure that what goes into the briefing book is solid. I hope to be able to deliver a supplement that I've been working on around, opportunities for improving communications for that meeting. We'll see, but that's my goal for that. And again, by May fifth, we have the deadline for camera-ready copy for the briefing book. We still need to discuss what sort of hard copy, independent of the briefing book, might go out, but I don't want to distract our meeting tonight with that. I think, and then we'll meet again Tuesday, May 6th. And at that point, I'd really like to focus on what beyond the report, and beyond what's in the briefing book, what kinds of presentations and outreach are we going to be doing? How do we get the word out, so to speak? And of course, town meeting begins on June 2nd. Okay, moving forward. So before I move forward, does anybody else from the committee have anything else that they want to raise tonight, in terms of things that you've been working on, or? Okay. Just checking online as well. So the report, we have the version 3 draft. Michael, so our previous meeting, we delegated writing a report to me, so I wrote a report. The focus of the report was to capture the work of the committee and our recommendations. I wrote what I thought was appropriate for the report. I wrote what I thought needed to be there. I recognize our concerns around length. So I'm happy to talk about that. And I think, it's a draft. So what I'd like to talk about tonight, is what impressions does the report make? I think, are we finding that the report is accurate? Are there inaccuracies in the report that we need to address? And I think the big question really is, who is your reader? The reader that Eric Van Loon, that you have in mind for the report, or Kristen that you have in mind. And for that reader, what is missing and what is working? What content do we need for what reader? And I think the question that we're going to come back to is, do we revise the report a lot to reach reader X or reader Y? Do we think about, just taking the recommendations from the report and rewriting those for the briefing book? What are our audiences for the report? What narratives do they need, and how do we deliver that? But what we have in front of us now is the version 3 draft. So I'd just like to start. If I can start online, maybe Keith, what are your takeaways from the report, and what do you think the gap is, for your reader? Who is your reader? What's your audience for the report? And what do you think the gaps are?
Yeah, my first question was, how much of that report do we think that we're going to get into the the town meeting briefing book?
Right.
And if it's and I think that and my target audience for who would read our report would be the people who pick up their town meeting, who get their town meeting briefing book in the mail, and they go through it and they find a few pages, maybe 3, no more, that describes succinctly what our recommendations are. And for me, I think that's the whole ball game there, and I think that's and that any other information that we have in a longer document should be limited to a deeper dive into particular topics. For example, representative town meeting, it only needs to be discussed once, well, twice. It needs to appear in the executive summary. And then there can be a discussion in one place, saying whatever it is we want to say about why we didn't do it. And I think that would make the whole report. I think having that, I'm saying 3 pages. Last week I said 5 pages. After reading 28 pages, I'm down to 3. And I think that our target audience is the voter who will take the time to read 3 thoughtful pages. There you go. Thanks.
Good, thank you. 3 pages of recommendations in the briefing book. Good. Chase, can I go to you, please?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Keith. I think trying to do it in significantly less. I mean, I know the gentleman who spoke from the public said maybe one page, maybe that's possible. So I think aiming for as succinctly as we can, as little as we can, that gets across what our recommendations were. Looking at the draft, they don't start until page 7. And then just following up with supplemental details so people can dive in the areas that they want to.
Good, thank you. Katie Bresnick, please.
Yeah, I agree with both Chase and Keith. I think it's having a short piece that has the key information and then appendices if people want to dig in on specific topics of interest. But I don't think people will, spend the time to go through the whole report unless they're avid town meeting people.
Right.
So I think we need something for everybody.
Good. Good, I'm gonna turn to the room now. Alice, would you comment first?
So I think I don't have anything really additional. I agree that the audience is smaller than we would probably like.
Sure.
So we need to write to the smaller audience, people who attend our meetings, who've been, probably sitting on committees in town, who have an interest in government. We'd like everybody else to read it. I just don't think they can or would take the time. Shorter is better is my perspective. So yeah, and I think I had never considered putting this whole document in the briefing book, so that's a new idea. I would have suggested. This looks like a pretty good approach to the briefing
Right,
book.
3 to 5 pages in the briefing book, is it right?
With the key highlights and the key important pieces that we're making suggestions to improve town meeting for those people who go to town meeting.
Good, thank you. Eric Van Loon, please.
I agree with the consensus for the briefing book, shorter, focused, better.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking more about sort of the overall book, and so, the overall report. So when we finish discussing what goes in the briefing book, I have some thoughts on the report itself.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on the report, please. And in terms of audience, who are the audiences for the report in your view?
There are multiple audiences. I certainly agree that there's percentage of people that would read all that we have is minuscule. Hopefully, the percentage that would read a 1-page executive summary is much higher, and would include everybody that's normal participants at town meeting. But I think that what would serve us best is something in between the 1 or 2 pages and the full report.
For what?
Focusing.
For what audience? Who's your reader there?
To me, that's actually an artificial question. I don't think we have much of any way of knowing. We can make up sort of categories of people who go to town meeting, people who have a little interest, but maybe not a lot, or we could make up a category of those who might be tempted if there was an interesting report. But I think that the main thing is the 300 to 500 people who serve on all the town committees, who are interested in town government. And we want to be able to have a short version that hopefully could attract a bunch of others.
I'm just, I try to interpret, right?
Yeah.
So, clearly one reader is the regular voter, which we're thinking to address with just recommendations succinctly in the briefing book. A different reader that I think you've identified are the folks who are invested in town meeting. They're active in town government, they're town meeting regulars. Do you see that as a distinct audience?
Yes, but I think, so let me step back for a minute. I've been sort of AWOL for basically a month since our last meeting and not able to benefit from the discussion last time. And I know what the draft looked like before I left, and now we've got version 3 in the packet on Friday.
Yeah.
And several things struck me. One is that while Katie and others have said, we hear the same thing from the survey that people heard in the surveys 30 years ago and all the
Yeah, yeah.
rest.
Yeah,
That in fact, if our top three recommendations are accepted and implemented, I believe it will bring about more profound changes in town meeting
Mhm.
than pretty much anything that's happened in the last 30 years. It's not just tinkering around the edges.
Mhm.
So I think we should feel really good about the recommendations that we've come up with,
Right.
and that there are far-reaching ones in addition to, you could call it tinkering. I think it would be a significant difference to start at 6:30 and end at 9:30.
Sure.
Maybe it's a tinker, but I think
Sure.
it'll help. So I think we should feel good about what we've come up with.
So there you're
Having-
speaking to the tone of what we're talking about, the tone of what goes into the briefing book, the tone of the executive summary.
Well, I'm trying to translate that then into the report itself.
Mhm.
I feel there's not as much of an evolution
Mhm.
from version 1 to version 3 as I guess going out of the country and being irresponsible thought might happen. And I'm struck by Carmen's suggestion that one thing when we think about audience or impact is to look at reports which we've looked at as a committee and said, oh, that's really good.
Right.
And that includes the Acton League of Women Voters report
Yeah.
not long ago. It
Right.
includes the Concord Town meeting from
Sure.
30 years ago. I mean, there've been
Sure.
2 or 3. And that to make the best impact with all the work that we have done
Mhm.
is maybe look at restructuring it in ways that's more parallel
Mhm.
to those other reports, which when we read them,
Right.
we came back and there was a consensus after reading it that they were good. And I'm going on and on a little bit, but the one other thing that struck me, I think we all have a huge debt of gratitude to you because you have taken on phenomenal oar, the laboring oar, and then some
Mhm.
in producing vast percentage of what we've got. And I know in my household, I think I've said this to you, anytime I write anything,
Yeah.
and I think I'm a fairly good writer, I think it's really great. I give it to my wife, and then who's a real writer and a real,
Yeah.
it comes back and it's better. And part of the reason that it is because it's a completely fresh set of eyes.
Sure.
Just,
Sure.
we talk about who's the reader, well, or the audience. And so I think, and would propose that in the next 10 days, before our next meeting, that we do a further draft of the report, front to end, putting it into a single voice, restructuring it somewhat so that the recommendations are clear, sort of, and upfront. And in fairness to you, that not be on your shoulders, that instead we give it to fresh eyes, other people to sort of take the report the next lap. Because this, one final thought, I mean, this is the report of the full committee.
Right.
All of our names are on it.
we all need to
and
be good
all
with
of
it,
us
right?
should
We all need to be able to live with it.
contribute
Yeah.
and feel good about it.
Yeah, so let's come back to that. That's a big question. I think, I'm in the phase for the meeting of let's find out what people think about what we have and who we think our audiences are. I think your proposal for the restructure of the report is interesting to talk about, obviously. But I want to, before we sort of dive into that, I want to finish going around. Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, please, Alice.
I'm sorry, interrupt. I just want to make sure I understand that. I heard the term vote, I'm taking the notes, so I want to make sure I get this right. We talked about the voters being one of the audience. Now I'm wondering, are we talking about the general voting population, of which we have many thousands of people, or are we talking about those who come to town meeting with the intent of voting on all warrant articles? Or are they the same? I just wanna make sure I've got my notes right, if they, are they
Yeah.
two separate audiences that were mentioned, or
We haven't specified.
or anyone
that.
who votes
I
as a.
think-
To me, they're two separate audiences.
Right.
In part because the people who normally come
Right.
to town meeting, the hundreds who serve on the committees and all, they tune in to this kind of thing. Alternatively, there's the majority of the voters of the town, who, well, it'll be interesting to see tomorrow.
So Eric, I mean,
May
yeah,
not even
Yeah.
vote in an election as hotly contested as this.
so to Alice's point, right, there are three audiences there, right? There's all the voters of town, and those are the folks who read the bridge, right? And not necessarily the folks who are reading the warrant / briefing book. There are the folks who do read the briefing book with the intention of covering the warrant, with the intention of coming to meeting. And then there are the folks, perhaps a subset of that are the folks who are active in town government, have been active in town government, who care about how those things work as well. So to me, that's actually three different, not to be too categorical, those are three different audiences with different interests. So, so hold that thought. I'd like to go to you, Kristen, please.
I guess to the point of audiences, I mean, we have audiences right here.
Mhm.
So we have representative audiences, but I guess I would say, I think that we can write our report and for the briefing book in a way that it's applicable to multiple audiences, so I urge us not to get too hung up on that at this point. I echo Eric's thanks for, everything that you put in there, and it is an exciting tale to read about how we wrestled with things. And I think you captured a lot of kind of the bigger questions that we wrestled with. I don't think it's compelling reading as a report yet, so I'm looking forward to kind of moving in that direction. And, to that end, I would say, it's, these are the recommendations, this might be the reason we recommended it, this might be the cautions, these were the other side of the argument to think about. And I think what's important is that it's actionable, right? Like, we hope that, if these recommendations are enacted, that the experience is better for people who go, or that maybe we pick up a few more people. But at a minimum, that maybe more people understand the reason they should be involved at town meeting and all the things ahead of that. So I think if we can convey kind of that sentiment along with our recommendations, in a succinct way, that would go further. And then in the, briefing book, hopefully we're gonna take a small extract, I would say less than 3 pages. With maybe a QR code that goes to, our page where they can kind of read the full report. And like the names, our names, just so that maybe people will say, well, who wrote this nonsense? Or, so they at least kind of know they can ask us. So that's what I would say, is that I think that regardless of the multiple audiences, we can write it in a way that communicates the recommendations in a concise way. And that we have, 3 or less pages of the briefing book that really excite people enough to then go to the rest of the report.
So that what's in the briefing book, in the way you're talking about it, is really an extended executive summary.
Yeah, at the most. I mean, I guess I would make it even
Yeah.
maybe even the 1-page executive summary. I think what you were onto, I thought was really good, Eric, was that 1 or 2 pages.
Those one page.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great, and then
Mhm.
the link, and
Good.
maybe you could end it with a cliffhanger.
Yeah. I'll do that.
That's the QR code.
Yeah. All right, Phil Swain, please, thank you.
All right, so just 2 things. So first of all, less is more. And I think that the length of the report diminishes the impact, and it will cause people not to read it. So less is more. The overall report should be no more than 20 pages. And a 1-page executive summary is what we should be targeting. Any longer than these things, 1-page executive summary, a 20-page report, will cause people not to read it.
Uh-huh.
So, whatever we can do to reduce the,
Looks like we lost the room.
I thought that was just me.
I think the room is rebooting.
All right, should be good, thank you.
We stopped
Yeah.
so you didn't miss anything, guys.
so, yeah, so what I was just finishing saying was, we should take the current draft, which is excellent, great succinct summary of everything that we've done, and reduce it by 2/3 to get to the point where we are short enough so that the main electorate can digest it. And that's 1-page executive summary, 20-page report.
Good, thank you.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
When you say 20-page report, is that exclusive of things like appendices that would be like the summary of
To be honest, yes, so the
summary of the survey?
appendices, people aren't gonna look at them. And so I think we should try to aim for getting everything into 20 pages, including appendices, and don't bury a bunch of detail in appendices.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Parashah, please.
So I'll answer your questions, I think. So the impression it made, I stopped after page 7. Because we laid out the 3 things that were in our charter. We talked about the 4 areas that we found, and then we had the 3 questions. And the recommendations came on page 7, so if we changed nothing else. Make the recommendations right after the executive summary. Right, so then I started reading and I couldn't keep each of the recommendations and what we discussed tied to those 4 things that we talked about. As I said in my email, so I actually sat down and said, what were we trying to solve and what do our recommendations, do they hit those? So I think going back and saying, okay, here are recommendations. So restructuring the report, basically. Length is another one. There's some examples of going back 350 years, I don't know where we need that. But the audience would be anybody in Concord that's willing to pick up a piece of paper. If it's 1 page or 2 page, read it. If they want the 20 pages, here's the QR code. And for the historical record, the survey results and all that, put them in an appendix and put them online somewhere. And people can get to them if they want, but it ought to be, the audience ought to be anybody that wants to read it.
Right, so regular voter who may or may not attend.
Voter who cares, doesn't care, a high school kid, doesn't matter. It ought to be a page or 2 pages that succinctly describe why we reformed, what we didn't want our recommendation, not even what we did, frankly, what's our recommendation? Like, who cares how we came up with it? I think they can go to the appendix or you can go to the 20-page report. So that was what I thought was missing was the tie, maybe I'm anal. But I just lost myself after page 8, I was like, I can't. So I don't know if it's accurate or not, I suspect it is, because you're a great note taker. So, and it's comprehensive. But that was and by the way, I'm a terrible writer, I hate staring at a piece of paper and I procrastinate, so it is difficult for me to write it, so hats off to you for putting pen to paper.
Sure.
But I do believe having another set of eyes, maybe, or let's just take it and reorganize it.
Sure, good, thank you. So who cares how they came up with it as not,
We do.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point, right? It's an interesting point, we'll come back to that.
Well, so I don't mean to be flip about it.
No,
right, but
yeah.
you know, a lot of the work that we went through, I mean, you can put that in the back somewhere, or
Sure,
whatever, but just
sure.
be brief about it.
Sure, okay. Carmen, let me go to you. You've seen a few of these reports. You're our, appointing authority, as it were. The report that you've read, how does it look? What is the gap between what we have and what we think the report, the committee report needs to be? And then I think the second piece of that is, how do we think about communicating effectively to what I'll say is the broad voter audience and comment?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I do think you could think about audience two different ways. You could think of it as a kind of homogeneous audience, which is just everybody who should have an interest in town meeting, whether in fact they do or not. But you also could think about the audience as the cursory reader, and then there's kind of some gradations to the kind of local government nerds, who would be really interested in, what else did you look at? And, where can I see a copy of SB, whatever it is in New Hampshire, to those people. But so as long as there's a place for those people I completely agree that the average reader is just gonna get scared away and say, this is too much, it's too long, and I can't find my way in here. But I think it's important that there be a place, whether it's the website or whether it's, a QR code in the report where you can get more information if you wanna know more, if you're curious about more. I think that, it did strike me that, executive summary should be short. The next thing that should happen is the recommendations. I wanna know, okay, give me the roadmap. What's this about? Okay, what are you recommending? And maybe some brief whys, why is this happening? We don't have a set of recommendations here, I don't think, that require a lot of explanation about how you examined the feasibility of implementing these, but in the discussion about the ones that require home rule legislation, I think it's good to talk about those, about that. And I also think that the things that you're not recommending, you should explain why you're not recommending them. Important to separate out the charge and the 3 specific citizen petitions that were referred to the committee. So that, you're meeting your charge, but you also were charged with, making recommendations to town meeting on those 3 petitions. So that might actually merit kind of, if you have recommendations based on your charge, I'm not sure exactly how you want to structure it, but you might want another, just 3 bullets of recommendations on the referred citizen petitions, article blank, recommend this, et cetera. Just so anybody who wants to track and see what happened, what happened to these, they got referred to committee, what the committee do. It's so hard to write short. It's hard to write it all, but it's really hard to write short. It certainly could be shorter. And I did notice repetition, and I'm always sometimes a little of 2 minds about whether you have repetition, because you don't always know where somebody's gonna come in to read something, and if they need some information for context, you wanna make sure they get it, but if it's a short enough document, they're not gonna miss anything. So, yeah, I love this graphic presentation. You may not actually need it because you have a short enough number of recommendations, but there were a lot of things you thought about. That, it could be interesting to stick a page that looks like this in the report somewhere that has and just so you know what I'm waving around here, this is Westford in 2023, and their recommendations, and they have, you know, to your point, Parashar, the question of how do you follow which recommendations relate to which topic, this has the topics, you know, make the meeting shorter, more efficient and predictable. What's going on there? Oh, mitigate common barriers to attendance, what's going on there, right? So, you could think about putting, so if you got lost, you could just look at that and
Yeah.
know where you
Well,
were.
I've heard a few of those, you've seen those from me before, yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing, I think is clear that, Katie will get you in just a second, please. So one thing is clear that we all think that what goes in the briefing book, 1 to 3 pages, focused on recommendations, really concise, really to the point. So that's a point of action for us. And so, independent of what happens with the rest of the report, I think the question is gonna be, who's gonna write that? Who wants to take on delivering something for the briefing book?
Before you ask that question, Eric, you might wanna get the rest of the people on the.
Well, no, we got
I guess you got
yeah.
everybody, yeah, except just Katie.
Katie, let me get your comment, so we can mull on that a bit.
Sure.
Thank
I
you.
mean, my comment was really just emphasizing what Carmen said about like a graphical display of information. I think we're
Yeah.
going to be way more likely to get people to read things in a table format, in like infographics if we can, or any kind of display that will draw the eye to it versus a written narrative where we'll probably lose people. So that was just maybe something that we can think about for the briefing book, which would draw attention to it.
Good, thank you, thank you. So let's get back to the question. 1 to 3 pages for the briefing book, who wants to write that?
I'd like to nominate Keith, since he's the, I mean, he really has thought the most about the briefing book. And has, the experience from other towns.
Is it the briefing book or the report?
I'm talking about the 3 pages that goes out.
3 pages. So
Which
what,
part of the
The 1
Well,
to 3 pages,
I guess I would recommend we get the report in a.
I wanna do compliment, the reason I wanna do that, I think we're gonna talk a lot more about the report. But what goes out in the briefing book is it's a specific format, you know, the whole town audience, I wanna make sure that we nail that.
I
Right,
thought
and-
your executive summary was good and the recommendations were good. So,
That's executive summary recommendations are about 8 pages.
no, I thought the first page, right, wasn't there?
No, there's a 1-page executive summary.
Yeah.
I think we could do a 1-page
Round,
executive summary.
start. And then the
The next
recommendations.
2 pages recommendations
Uh,
with the what we're recommending.
Yeah.
On one hand, and then what we're not recommending that we took up.
in
And
out.
just, and
Okay.
put
So I
that in.
would skip the middle bit, yeah. The summary, the 1 page is good,
Uh-huh.
and the recommendations I thought were good.
What recommendations?
You start on page 8, with
Uh-huh.
the title, it says recommendations. and
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay, so that thing from page 8,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I would say if we can avoid like making additional writing, we should. I think sticking to a really crisp executive summary plus the recommendations in the briefing book makes sense. We don't want to have, I think, different text in the briefing book than we do in the report. Needing to cross-check and make sure things are accurate. So if we can use the same text, even better.
Good, thank you, Katie. So the portion I have the document in front of me, let's just use, the executive summary and whatever is on page 8.
It's actually, it says page 9 here, but.
Mine says page 8, yeah, what page 8 from mine? Oh, the one with recommendations right at the top.
Yeah,
Yeah, same thing.
All right, that's 1 page, basically.
And if you add what we didn't consider, that might be a
Right.
page and a half, and I think 2.5 pages for the briefing book is.
Well, we considered, but didn't go with it.
Yeah, and that's
Well, that's
pretty
what we-
reasonable, I think, for a briefing book.
So that's 2.5 to 3
Yeah.
pages for the briefing book. Does someone want to take ownership of delivering it?
I could do that.
How's that?
You don't like to write.
No, but I got something right in here. I think you did a good job. I think it's a matter of tweaking what you have here.
So, you didn't read my report, though.
I stopped.
And he's a voter.
I stuck to it. I think I stuck to it, but I thought the first and the recommendations were good.
Yeah.
So I would start there and tweak it.
this may be too in the weeds
Yeah.
for this, but I just following up on Ned's comment about whether you wanna lead with adopting remote participation in voting.
Let's come back to that, Carmen, I think it's a big question, yeah.
Okay, but just what I was just gonna say about that quickly is that is the longest term thing
I
that
agree.
you have as a recommendation, which all by itself argues for it not to be the first thing.
It ought to be the things that are gonna make the most immediate impact on town meeting.
Like start with electronic voting or start with the briefing book.
And all
Well,
that.
so it's where the weeds a little bit there, to be fair, I'd like to come back to it, I think,
Yes,
you know,
of course.
cause I think I think what I've interpreted or inferred from the way that Eric has approached it is to look at the potential impact. You know, the big changes that we're gonna make to town meeting over time. I think, you know, Ned's framing is look tactically and look concretely. And there's a good argument for that as well, but I think we can go back and forth about that. So I wanna settle the question of who's gonna do the copy for the briefing book? Is it you? Is it Eric? Is it Alice? Someone needs to own it.
That
that's
sounds like a
all.
little subcommittee.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
So
Yeah.
I propose that Parashar, that we delegate that responsibility to Parashar.
I'm willing to do it, I think we've got a good base there, and I would just tweak it here and there. And circulate around, you know,
Thank you for doing
my
that.
money where the
Okay,
mouth is.
good. So, I have some edits from Carmen. I'll pull those in.
Okay,
I'll deliver to you a couple of pages in a Word document, and then we can go from there.
Perfect.
Good.
And just on the open meeting law, I would just suggest that you send it to Shannon
sure,
and ask Shannon to circulate it to the
Yes.
committee and everyone can send their comments back to Shannon.
perfect.
Okay, thank you.
So on process, that sounded
Yeah.
like everyone would be editing, but is it going from Parashar to Shannon and then Shannon will circulate Parashar's work? Is that what I heard?
The way I heard that was, I'm gonna take version 3, I'm gonna apply some changes to that. So I'll make quote unquote a version 4. I will give Parashar a subset of that for him to modify for the briefing book. His edits will go back to Shannon, and then Shannon will somehow distribute that version to the committee for review.
Gotcha, thank you.
Here, our next meeting, we would do.
And we're talking about the briefing book document.
The thing that goes.
So do we need to set up some parameters, like, Parashar is gonna come up with a 1-page executive summary and a 2-page,
Give me
set of
leeway to
recommendations.
do maximum of no more than 3 pages total. If it's a page and a quarter on one versus the other.
okay, all right, so yeah, so do we need to set that up, or
Let me take a step, as I said, I thought the
But
executive
aim
summary was
for-
pretty good,
aim
The
for no more
recommendations
than
were
3
pretty good.
pages? Yes,
add in some bullets around what we do, and maybe it's 3 pages.
Yeah.
Try for us.
12-point font, one inch margins.
Do you think you can make the table? Cause I do think that we.
I will see what we can do, we will see what we can do. How's
I
that?
would suggest that we don't need to wait for a rewrite for Bob.
I'll get it by noon tomorrow.
I'm just saying you have to take some time off, because if Parashar's pretty happy with what's there, he gets
Yeah.
what we're trying to write. Do you need a,
It's up to, Mark,
Well, look, I do that from Carmen, I haven't applied them yet, I think they improve what we have. They do overlap with the material that I intend to pass on to
just
Parsha.
trying to make it a little easier for you?
Well, we're gonna talk about the report in a second, so.
and
yeah.
either way, as I think Katie said, whatever words we use for the briefing book. Ought to be identical in the document, so that kind of then cover that later, we'll make sure that ties up.
Yeah, good. All right, good. So that's a point of action. Thank you. Okay, so back to the report, the committee report. You know, we've raised a few questions, right? How closely do we benchmark the report that we sign off on with other committee reports? You know, how careful do we need to be about length for the committee report? What's the right structure for the committee report? But I think the real question is how we want to go forward. I mean, so Eric, to come back to your proposal, it's that you see a real opportunity to restructure the version 3, perhaps to move recommendations forward, to push a lot of the discussion back, identify areas of repetition. So you see an opportunity there.
I do.
Good, good. Now the question is, who's gonna do that? Is that you? Is it Alice? Is it Phil? Kristen, who's
Alice,
gonna do
Alice
it?
is willing to do it.
No, it's a real question, right? I mean, you know, it was a lot of effort to write the version.
Yeah.
Put a lot of thought into
Yeah.
it. You know, it's not bad, it's not perfect, but it's not bad. It's also not what we as a committee wanna live with. And so to go from version 3 to the thing that we haven't been really clear about our criteria, other than less than 20 pages. To go from version 3 to the thing that we all live with, there's gonna be some work, and somebody has to own that. So I wanna make sure that if somebody takes it, we really own it.
Can I ask
So,
a
yeah.
suggestion,
It's
maybe?
just- Yeah.
Who's gonna say, sir?
So this is what lawyers call a declaration against interest.
No, I'm not familiar with that, so.
You're about to get an illustration.
Yeah, about to get it, yeah. So at 2 points in my checkered career, I have had a job as editor in 2 different locations. And part of the job is taking manuscripts and working with them, massaging them and trying to make them crisper. So having said that, paints me partly into a corner. I could do it and would be willing to do it.
Mhm.
I would want to be able to call. I partly I'm feeling that you all did a bunch of things during the month when I was gone, and I know that there's some drafts, suggestions, whatever.
There's a version
Be able-
3 draft and a bunch of edits in Carmen, which
Yeah.
in my judgment, good. That's what we have. So,
Well, I'd be glad to do that and welcome other things from other people. But synthesizing it and doing it in short order, my goal, the idea would be that if we're gonna meet 2 weeks from now,
mhm,
then 10 days from now, it's gotta be
Mhm.
back to everybody to read.
uh-huh.
You're gonna restructure it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're willing to do that, I would appreciate it. But what was?
No, I was gonna say exactly that, right? I ended and I can share mirror if the matrix can be, but some way. What I did to tie
Yeah,
our charge, the 3 questions, and
Yeah.
then our specific recommendations, did we hit the things we said we were gonna do?
I have a
And maybe
matrix.
restructure it in that type of a form.
Yeah, I have a matrix. I took what you did, I worked on something this afternoon, and I can revise it a bit, but.
And that might help.
Yeah.
So restructure.
I'd be willing to assist.
Right.
Right,
You're
as
very welcome.
necessary.
That's informal though. It's gonna go to Eric, and
Okay.
whatever you do independently is really up to you.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
that way there's no
I'm
substitute.
saying
So that way you're not a subcommittee.
Yeah.
Well, so I think we have a great situation here. We have Eric and Alice to take the next step.
Don't name them both together, that's what we're getting at.
No, no, it's Eric.
Eric
It's
is
Eric.
there taking over.
Okay, but with Alice's help.
No, we are not, as a chair, I am not designating Alice. What she chooses to do in her own time, independently of the committee assignment is. up to
Right, well,
Alice.
it sounds like though we have a great
Person.
plan.
I will take responsibility,
Good,
and that is gonna include asking people, but ultimately, the buck stops here.
yes, well, thank you.
Everyone go through me.
Sure.
Good. Well, that's a big decision, thank you, Eric. Let me ask a few things about, what we have so far. So one thing, right, is, did people get a chance to go through any of the comments from the report, from this survey? I mean, there was the 60 pages of raw comments that I sent out, in October, and then in this week's packet, there is just the automatic summary stuff from those comments. Did folks have a chance to take a look at those? And my question really is, does the draft that we have adequately address what we heard from the public about their views about town meeting? In other words, for the folks who took the effort, made the effort to fill out something in the survey, are they gonna feel heard by what we have in the report? That's a judgment.
So the one, Eric, so the
Yeah.
short answer to your question, the views on bottom of
Yeah.
page 5, top of Thanks.
Yeah.
I thought appropriately summarized what we heard from the survey. Now, did I go back and look precisely recently? No. Based on my memory, I thought that was pretty good.
Right,
The one question I had is, we talked about effort, our areas that we identified, effort, experience, trust, engagement.
right,
When I first read it, I thought that those were also the views coming from the survey. But I don't think that is. I think what
Yeah.
we did, and we ought to just make it a little bit more clear.
right,
And it took me a second reading, so wait a minute, that's the survey, and then what we felt coming into it both reflects what we read in the survey about plus our personal opinions
sure.
that we bring to this.
Yeah, let me,
But I thought the survey thing was good. I think you summarized it
good,
really well.
good.
So, I thought it was accurate.
Yeah, I don't wanna, I was gonna talk about the organization stuff, but I don't wanna derail us with that.
I mean, I
yeah,
would
please,
say
Kristen.
two things
Yeah.
about that, but which are you looking at? What page of the report?
On page 5, it says views of town meeting, and that's when Eric summarized what we heard from the survey.
Yeah, and some of that was from
Yeah.
Katie as well,
So,
so.
whatever, but I thought that was a fair summary.
I mean. So the dominant theme is the desire to streamline one's meeting participation and have a shorter meeting. I think that's where we really have not addressed anything, and I know you have it on the, on the agenda for tonight to talk about it, but so I mean, I think there was two things. It was making town, meeting more representative, which we looked, and it's not as representative with younger voters. And I don't know that we've done anything necessarily to address that. And then the other part was making it shorter, and I don't know that we've necessarily done anything to do that. I mean, it's still,
We've addressed, but we haven't succeeded in making a big change, I would frame it that way.
Oh, well, and I would actually disagree, because our
Okay.
recommendation is to make it shorter.
in what way?
Well,
Like
the
the-
6:30 to 9:30.
Okay, so you're saying, but that's if we ended it.
Sorry?
That's if we had like, we said no new business after.
I understand that,
Okay,
but. okay,
Which
but
is a
it-
change.
It's a change, and then I think the notion of consolidating everything in the calendar will streamline the meeting.
Wait, consolidating.
The consent calendar.
The consent
Consent for you.
Yes, but I didn't see that in here.
It's in the body of
It's
the
in the
report,
body,
though.
yes.
And that's what I mean by
Yeah.
having a table up
Yeah.
front to say, check, check, check,
Yeah.
we address these things.
Which I did that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So, I mean, so I guess I'm thinking, and we'll talk about it a little bit today, so, if we wanted to make it a like, if we thought that we'd get more in participation because instead of being a 10-hour meeting, and I'm sorry that I never did this analysis of like, how many hours each year have we spent? Is it?
I was actually working on it, actually.
All right,
No, no,
that's
no,
not,
no, yeah.
it's 12, right?
Yeah,
And so if we think we make it 10 hours, are we gonna get more people because it's 10 hours? Probably not until we make it 6, right? And so I don't think our suggestions actually go that far. And so that would be what I would be curious about. That's kind of the one of the aspects that I feel like we didn't give due diligence to, so.
no, it's funny, because I actually thought the opposite.
Oh, okay.
My little check, is there, we hit, so,
Okay.
I think the proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're wondering, so like what I'm hoping is that, we do surveys at the end of the town meeting this year and next year, and people become kind of more satisfied, and then maybe we have some incremental additions, and then we'd be like, okay, well, those recommendations maybe move the needle a little bit, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I mean, if it kind of largely stays the same, I think we're not gonna see appreciably more families with young children, and Katie's got her hand up.
yeah, I
Maybe
see
let's-
that, but
sorry.
finish what you're saying, and I'll get to it.
Well, I want to
Yeah.
hear from,
Well, we-
families with young children, but I mean, like, I don't think we've done much to address that demographic, and maybe we should acknowledge that and say, this is one of the things we heard, and we still, just the nature of town meeting is such that it takes a lot of time, and, there's a demographic that can't give away that much time
Mhm.
right now, and therefore they, welcome their neighbors to represent them, and they give input throughout the other times, so.
Mhm. Good, Katie, please, thank you.
I guess I agree with Kristen's first point that I don't know that we've done enough due diligence in terms of like how to make a shorter meeting. Other communities seem to succeed in doing that, and I don't think our recommendations will appreciably shorten the meeting, which is something that is impactful for families with young children. And which is why I think the home rule petition for remote participation is the most impactful by far for people in my life stage. And that really the only way I will be able to vote for all things at town meeting as if remote is a thing. And which is why I obviously strongly support that and think it is one of our key top recommendations, even if it takes a long time. But as it is, it's not possible for families to really participate. And like, I think that's a bit of a disappointment to me that there isn't a recommendation that does make it so much easier for families. But that is the nature of town meeting. But I also don't think it's asking people, my neighbors, to go and represent me. Like, I would like to be able to be there still, and that's remote participation and why it's so important.
Good, thank you. 1 second, Dave. So the question is for the folks who made the effort to do the survey, they expressed a lot of critical views of our town meeting. Will they feel heard by at least what we have in version 3? And I think your judgment is yes. I think, Kristen, I think what I hear you saying is, well, you know, we didn't solve some key problems. You know, we spent time on them, we didn't solve them. What I think is accurate, but.
I mean, I don't think we spent a lot of time with, that the sessions were too long.
Well, we made the choice to defer to the moderator a lot there, right? I mean, I am working now on trying to analyze where the time goes in meeting. So, you know, hopefully, but, you know, with the goal of, can we get to a 2-night meeting? But we've spent a lot of time looking at ways to sort of.
We did a
Yeah,
robust
yeah.
discussion about 1 minute, 2 minutes,
Yeah.
do we look at, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and then we talked about. And explored the idea of food in the cafeteria, I mean, and I think what we said for the food trucks is maybe explore for next year, because we ran out of time.
Yeah.
This year, right, and I think we should say that.
Yeah.
Right,
I feel like we talked-
100%.
I feel like we talked a lot about clickers,
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
a lot, and I
Yeah.
think clickers are not gonna appreciably make it shorter. And they're not gonna make it so that more people attend, so I wanna,
Yeah,
I'll go on the record, that's what I'll say, I mean,
yeah,
I'm glad to hear, you know, that there's different impressions and things like that, I mean, I think if we were really trying to invite a younger audience, then we would be having it different times, or we were talking about, I mean, like, we talked about sending babysitting at home, or like, you know, and the anecdotal evidence I got was like, don't worry about it, like, don't bother, so like, we have that tension too, but we're also not looking at it on a Sunday afternoon. When kids were awake and families could be there together, like what we said about that was the survey said we didn't want it on a Sunday. And I just think that, I don't think we qualified the scenario well enough to say, you know, that question is accurately representing, what Katie's got her hand up again, so maybe.
good.
Yeah, I mean,
Alex? Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
sorry, I was just gonna say, like, in terms of the original question for like whether or not we respect people's time in completing the survey enough with the report, I don't think people will necessarily be looking for like so much their data in the report, but I think it's even acknowledging that we have looked to try to make it easier for families, and even people with families are acknowledging that it's still kind of impossible for people with families. And we're hoping the home rule petition that allows remote participation in the future will help accommodate that demographic, even though it's going to be a little bit of time.
Sure, good, thank you. Carmen, please.
I think it's gonna be really interesting to see how Carlisle's experiment this year with food trucks on a Sunday and, you know, areas for kids and so on. Whether that makes a difference for them.
Yeah.
You know, I was at Westford Town Meeting a couple weeks ago to, you know, watch their electronic voting thing. They do their town meeting, they do the whole thing on a Saturday, they started at 9 o'clock, they finished around 3. They only had about 30 articles on the warrant, they had a lot of things on a consent agenda. But still, they had 400 people there, and they're a larger town than we are, not by a lot, but by a little bit, so.
Okay.
Alice, did you have something or?
Well, I just have 2 short comments. One is that, what we're seeing in voter turnout in Concord is similar to the national data on who votes. That younger folks just find it hard to even get out and vote before or after work. It's true, the numbers just are not as high.
Mhm.
Typical voters are older, demographics are older. So we mimic that, you know, the national date on voting. I forgot my other point, sorry, that was first. Oh, so I was thinking we could write just a summary, couple of sentences about, these are immediate actions that can be taken, but as technology and laws change in the coming years, this should be revisited continually. So it gets at the fact, these are like what we can do today. They don't solve the big problem. The big problem will have to keep biting at, nibbling at each year and make it better each year.
Sure.
Because we didn't solve the problem in 1 year.
No, but one of the things that we talked about was also making it more relevant to people, and that hopefully would increase voter engagement, you know, like for different demographics, and I hope that, you know, comes through. It's not like an immediate thing. We talked about it in the engagement group, but we didn't, you know, get to move the needle on too much on that.
Yeah, David Allen, please, you had a comment?
Yes, and first apologies for so delayed, I got a call, 5 minutes, turned into an hour, so. Katie went to, of course, my observation, which is, the way in which remote participation may make it possible for families. It doesn't actually shorten the amount of time that families gotta spend, somebody's still gotta be engaged. And to know, there is a campaign now at the state level, I think that may have been heard before, with more than one bill for statewide enabling of towns to go remote, along with getting a bunch of towns to come up with their own rule petition to create that critical mass to say to everybody, hey, do this thing. In fact, I managed to sit down with Robbie Simon, Carmine Gentile, aide and the lead director just a few days ago, and we got into it. Notice one thing that could happen, citizens could make their voices heard. It could be in a report that this is important to do. And they've got friends in other towns. That's where the action is, in getting a bunch of towns to get a home rule petition out. We need grassroots to solve our national problem. We need grassroots to solve this problem.
Good, thank you. I'd like to go to a different interest for the report. The traditionalist, and you know, Ned, I'll say that your comments were on point with respect to concerns about remote participation. I think, you know, we've had a really kind of trenchant set of emails from one voter, Sue Felshin, you know, with her concerns around electronic voting and the change to the culture of town meeting. So for the folks who do have a strong interest in the traditions of town meeting, does this draft adequately speak to their concerns in terms of the consideration that we've given to remote participation in voting, to clickers? Have we represented in our consideration of concerns of their traditionalists? I mean, you know, sorry, I'll be really concise. I mean, you know, you voted against electronic voting, you've abstained other times. Are your concerns about those things well represented in the draft?
No, not yet. I think we want to do that, and I think we should do it concisely, like, and the way that I was thinking is like, this is the recommendation, this is the consensus of the committee, and this is kind of why. And here are like the cautions that we heard.
Right.
Or I don't know if cautions is the right word, but I mean, I think, and that way, if we institute electronic voting and then in 10 years, we kind of look back and we're like, oh, it really changed this, we're like, you know, oh, that was one of the things that we thought could happen or not. I guess I would just, it's not necessarily the traditions of town meeting. I think that what I'm hearing is more kind of the purpose.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
no, I'm just, I
No,
think
I
that's
agree
one of
with
the
you.
qualifications I've heard from people. It's like, yeah, so. I think we, particularly with electronic voting, and I think even home rule petition, because I think home rule petition certainly has the potential to change, you know, the dynamic, and so I just think we should put that in there as this could happen.
Yeah, so, and the discussion around the remote participation in voting in version 3, there's some attention paid to some of the concerns around that. It might be too wordy or whatever. but if you could really focus on that, and provide some comment to myself or to Eric. I'd like it myself, actually, I can get it to Eric. And also as well, if you could communicate your specific concerns around electronic voting,
Okay.
so that those views are well represented, that would be really helpful, please.
Look, I'm gonna be
I was
the
gonna send
one
it to Shannon.
responsible for moving things to the next draft. I'd
Yeah.
like to get them directly or
Send it to
Shannon.
Send them to Shannon, and then Shannon can redistribute it to it, but I'd like to see them. And if I get them quickly, then I can put them in version 4 and get that to you, Eric. But I felt a lack in version 3, not getting your voice in it, so I wanna fix that.
Well, and I'm trying to represent kind of it's not the minority necessarily, but the people who are representing the minority, I guess.
Yeah.
So I wanted to
Yeah,
kind of convey some of those remarks that we had heard. And much of it could come right from the survey, you know.
Sure,
latest too.
sure. In the survey, people talked about, there are a number of instances of people talking about feeling like I'm disenfranchised because town meeting is so hard to get to. And, the desire expressed both in the survey, for separating deliberation and from voting, and the comments in the survey really speak to this, I just wanna get my vote in, right? I don't value all this deliberation stuff. I wanna be able to get my vote in. Why can't we separate deliberation from voting? And so, the choice that we made not to adopt the New Hampshire style referendum ballot, the choices that we made, Scott Gillis, made a suggestion around, hey, can we just do deliberation on 2 nights and then vote on the 3rd? The choices that we, the things that we did to look at that, came back to no, deliberation and voting go together. That's what the legislature is. So for those readers who are not beholden to the idea of a local legislature, have we done an adequate job of communicating our thinking to them?
The fundamental is that there are a lot of things where there are deep different opinions. And there is no way in the world we're gonna satisfy or persuade
Right,
some people. We've looked at things,
right,
you make a judgment based on,
Right.
here's the pros, here's the cons.
Right.
Here's things which could go wrong
Sure.
hypothetically.
But this speaks, I didn't do a good job. This speaks to the question of trust, right? We have this decision-making body in town, right? Only 5% of the people in town show up for it. Why should I believe that we're well represented? Right, so, we come back to, well, they delegate it, right? They go, well, I don't need to be there. They go, oh, it's really complicated. It's not that interesting to me. There are a lot of different reasons which we don't exactly know why people don't participate, but the low level of participation signals naively that we may perhaps trust, have less trust in the decision-making body. And so, if I get that, if I as a naive voter get that, oh yeah, it's supposed to be a legislature, it's these 2 things together, maybe I have a little bit more understanding of the institution, a little more trust in it. So, again, folks go, I don't see why you have to even go to town meeting. It's stupid.
So I need to do standard.
Yeah.
So first of all, I agree, you're never gonna please all the people all the time.
Sure.
Number 2, I think we're reading into some folks saying they don't trust it because of A, B, and C. They wanna have their cake and eat it too.
Mhm.
For better or for worse, and it's their right to have their cake and eat it too, which is to show up, 30 minutes, vote and leave. The fact of the matter is, for whatever for totality of reasons, town meetings are not structured like that. So they can complain all they want, we considered ideas to make it smoother, we're consolidating consent agenda, but the other thing we suggested, by the way, is to take the high interest items and put them all together. So if you don't want to be there for 3 days, we're gonna try to get you there for 4 hours. So we've made a lot of effort to do this.
Yeah, right.
We tell them we deliberated, we made these efforts, if they don't like it, well, we're in a democracy, you can't win all the time. If we make it clear, I think that's fine, whether we adequately do or not, will be up to the reader, the judge.
I mean, I would love the point about representation addressed, like how, that, you know, because we do seem to hear it when people are dissatisfied with a certain vote. And they're dissatisfied because they didn't show up, or what didn't change, and I mean, but I think that the data suggests, whether it's from other studies and things like that, that it's representative enough, and in general, it's not gonna change the outcome. So, but I don't, is that, can we
I don't
convey
think,
that?
I'm not sure I would say that, to be honest with you.
Oh, tell me more,
Because we don't know.
okay.
I mean, we think it's representative, we look at the voter, but frankly, we don't really know. Other towns have done some work, I don't know that we've done it in a
We did-
statistically
We
meaningful
did
manner.
geographic and age.
Yeah,
Whether it's, again,
Yeah.
whether, I'm not a statistician, I think.
Oh, wait,
probably-
please, go ahead.
But even if it was, who says it has to be? If people have an interest in a specific item
You should.
and they all show up, that's the result you get.
right.
So I think what you're saying is, and I don't know that we've mentioned it yet, is that kind of the single issue voter, which we found is like, that's just the way it is, it's gonna be like
And we made a
that.
choice to better serve them.
Right, and so I think maybe a point that acknowledges that we understand that, and that, you know, if you're a purist and you think everybody should be at town meeting all the time, we understand, but that's not the case, or something. I guess we didn't really make any, well, we did make recommendations to try
We made
to,
a choice to better
right,
serve
so I mean,
I think
Katie,
it goes back to our very first meeting where we talked about, if you don't like football, you're not gonna go to the game.
yeah,
You know, and you can complain, because it's easier to wanna make changes and express a
Right.
contrary view if you're not there. If you really wanna vote, you know what to do.
and again, just, you know, what does it take for people to trust town meeting, the ones who don't come to town meeting?
Come,
Fair.
trust is earned. You watch the process, be part of the process and vote.
Actually, so I wanna get to Katie, I'm sorry, but, the survey shows that the people who come to town meeting have a much higher level of satisfaction in the business of the town.
Yeah.
So it'll be in the draft. Katie, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the point of representation. First, I do have on my to-do list to write about the analyses that I did, though basic, about representation, but I have had a busy couple weeks, so apologies on the delay with that. And I'll send something along and see if that fits in with the new draft version. Secondly, we don't have a lot of data to like see whether people who come are representative of the larger community, because we just don't have all the data. We have age, we have precinct, and what that shows is no, it's not representative of the voting population, especially younger folks. Whether that's meaningful, hard to say. It's not a random sample of people that show up. So there's really no statistics that can tell you how well that vote reflects what the larger community would say if they were to show up. So I think there's not really much we can do about it, or say about it, other than it is a select group that comes, and we don't know if that does reflect the larger community.
Right, and we're not turning anybody away.
And Erica, I know the trust thing, I'll say this, I think what we're observing in this year's town elections reflects whether people are trusting their government or not. And if they feel like they're not trusting, they will get more active, you'll see more engagement, and we'll see the results.
Sure.
So, yeah, we made changes, whether they're big or not, don't know, but the proof will be in the pudding. And we'll see more people show up.
Good. Okay, so, I feel like I've gone through the material that I have for the meeting. We've made 2 decisions. Parashar is gonna do a 1 to 3 pager specifically for the briefing book. Eric, you're gonna take, what I'll call version 4, which could be tomorrow, and you're gonna run with that, to your discretion, as it were, and we'll see where that lands. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. If I could try to build on Elsa's observations just a moment ago. Do you have in terms of the larger framework underlying choice? What is to treat all objections that you've heard in the survey, rooted about and conversations and so forth, as being on equal ground? All objections are equal. The alternative I want to suggest is to be clear that democracies only work in certain ways. And town meeting, as the local legislature, only works in certain ways. which is you've had deliberation, which is what it's really about. You've been saying it, you've heard me say it too many times now. The vote comes at the end of it. Yes, it's true, the Concord town meeting is different from other towns, town meetings are shorter, but they're structural reasons. Well, so, and what we have is what we have. And then, when you're considering objections, you consider it against that standard of making a democracy work. You have yourselves engaged, heard Kristen go here a while ago, I don't have the word in my mind right now, but giving people a reason to realize that if they're finally have a consciousness raising and understand that they're governing themselves, guess what? It is fun by me to do that. Yeah, you can delegate it to somebody else, but the point is you have a choice. You can say, okay, all these objections, they're all standing at the same level, or wait a minute, we have a starting point here. It's democracy, and this is the legislature, and this is how legislatures work. Now we measure that objection against that standard. That's
Thank you. Ned, I'd like to give you an opportunity for a few words if you have something to share.
Listen,
Good, thank you. So I'm moving towards closing then, with a clear course of action for the next 2 weeks. Anything from anybody else before we
Wait,
close?
were you gonna talk about the 6-hour meeting?
I don't have a lot to say about it, I'm sorry. I think, I'd like to look at that. I had a chat with Carmen about it. I think, trying to recall what we talked about. I
Was
think,
your thought that we were gonna make a recommendation about?
well, yeah,
That or-
I'm sorry. I mean, I can't make a recommendation without putting some substance to it, right? Oh, we should have a 6-hour meeting, but how does it happen? How do we fulfill, we've got a warrant, we've got the deliberative process that we do, how does it? So, there are a few questions there, right? One is the choice of how much time do we allocate upfront to presentations? And, can we take some of that time and shift it out of the meeting? There's the question of, and Ned raised this, but, how does the moderator go through and present the consent calendar? Other things that other moderators, including Carmen, have done to move some of move some of the business, out of meeting so that we get into active deliberation as quickly as possible. I think the thing that would be interesting, and we call it would be to look at, last year's town meeting or the 2023 town meeting and think about 3 different kinds of articles. One, there's stuff we just blow through, right? It's not on the consent calendar, but there's a presentation, we get it, we vote, and bang, it's done, right? So then there are articles, and so that's an article that's been really sort of well posed to the meeting for us, the voters, to deal with. Another kind of article, it's something really new, it's complicated, a lot of experts in the audience, and they ask all these technical questions. I think you talked about the solar cell batteries.
Solar batteries, right.
It's like, it could have been 10 minutes, right? But all, we get into it, we're not familiar with it, we want to understand it, and those wind up going longer. So the dynamics of the meeting relate to the questions that we pose to the public. And are there characteristics of those questions that we can predict that make the meeting longer? I think when we talk about, it'd be really great to have a 2-night meeting, which I think would be, I would love to be able to say that we were able to sort of get there with that, but I don't have a mechanism and I don't have a way to sort of say that we can really predictably do that. But to understand when meetings run long would be nice. And part of it again is looking at what are the articles like that drive time, and part of it's just the procedure. So I'm working on breaking down the timeline for town meeting automatically using the YouTube transcripts. So I'd like to be able to turn that around and see if there's any opportunities to identify hotspots in meetings that make things run long. But
So, we have it, when we did town meeting on Sunday, we were able to do it on Sunday and Monday, 2 days. For a variety of reasons, I think that people were unhappy with that construct. But it may be worth revisiting it especially. You know, if things go really well in Carlisle, and if you think about. Structure the meeting in a different way so that you have like a whole room where there's like people, you know, where you can sit with your kids, or there's a movie going or whatever. I don't know still that there's anything we're gonna do about the travel soccer games and the baseball and the, you know, and it's mom's birthday and just all the other demands that people have on a Sunday. But that was the only way that we were able to get it to two. And
Except for COVID. COVID year.
Well, at COVID, yeah, but we chopped so much off that, we chopped so much off that warrant, we had no presentations.
No
And
presentation there, we had presentations ahead of time.
there were presentations
Available
in the
yeah.
virtual
Yeah.
hearings that we had the briefing book with the presentations in it. And we had a full debate.
I'm just saying,
on-
we didn't really discuss that, you know, during this,
So
because,
it's late in the game for
Yes.
new recommendations. So here's
Yes.
a suggestion, is that it's a soft recommendation, as we have several others that are also soft. Something to the effect of continue to explore other towns' models for implementing a shorter, perhaps 6-hour town meeting. And experiment as we go along. It allows, you know, we experimented with it on Sunday, Monday, maybe we try it again. So the recommendation isn't a hard and fast, we should do this, but it says, let's continue the process of understanding what works and doesn't work in other communities and adopt those that do.
So I
Right,
have a question. It said Westford, the consent agenda took 4 minutes. How long did it take?
I don't know how long it took, but it was pretty quick, but they do it in a different way.
Yeah, so what
And,
did they
and,
do?
and I can do it the way they do it, you know, I haven't historically,
Yeah.
because it has always seemed to me that it's important, especially for those people who walked in cold and maybe haven't been to a hearing, and they don't know what the heck this article is about. So that they deserve at least like a little thumbnail explanation of what this thing is about and why a decision was made to put it on the consent calendar, that it didn't need a full
Right.
deliberation.
But they didn't do that?
They did not do that. Instead, they went through a list of, you know.
Yep.
Article 1, anyone want to put a hold on that? Article 2, hold. Article
so
3,
put
hold.
the burden on the.
Bingo.
yeah.
On the intent,
Yeah,
exactly.
their homework.
Instead of like all of us sitting there,
Yeah,
listening, no offense,
Yeah.
for 20 minutes while you explain to people that didn't really pay attention what was going on.
So the interesting thing though, there's a flip side to everything,
Sure.
right?
Of course.
Okay, so it's like presentations. If you have shorter presentations, you might get more questions and
Yep.
spend more time on that. Longer presentations, better explanations, maybe no one gets up and has a question. So there's a yin yang.
Absolutely, but on the consent calendar,
And with the consent calendar, there were easily 3 or 4 things that got pulled off their consent calendar by people who were like, what is that? And then when they took it up, you know, it was not a big deal, but it was just kind of, I don't understand what this is.
Sure.
But they also had the ability of a single person could take a hold off of their consent
what do
calendar.
we have? What's our rule?
It's low,
We're using 10.
10?
yeah.
10?
It's real low.
So maybe we just, maybe try that this time, even
Sure.
without a formal recommendation from us.
Well, the other thing we were gonna try this year was the little explainer videos, right?
Yeah,
And
We have to
so,
make those though.
no, but I mean, like, after, my understanding was like after the 19th, right
after the 19th.
Right, then, and then there's.
No one at Minuteman Media.
Right,
is
it's a
interested in
Minuteman
talking
media,
until
you know, after the 19th, we'll do that. And maybe if, and then they have to be, you know, short enough,
Yeah.
then they might take you know, part of that explanation, so.
So there's also the guy at North Andover, right? Is it North Andover?
Yeah,
Who does the town meeting in one day?
the warrants
And
have.
what is this, how is it that he does that so quickly? Is it?
Well,
is
they
it
have a lot,
because-
they have a lot fewer articles, you know, I don't really know, I know that they have a lot fewer articles, and I know that they start at 9 o'clock in the morning. And they finish it in one day. Beyond that, you know, there are some towns that have a really hands-on finance committee that has really worked everything up, and I think in a lot of those towns, there are fewer questions. About things where the finance committee is making the motions and not the entity that is gonna get the appropriation, so, it's, but I'm happy to go look at that and see if I can figure that out, I know
Yeah,
that moderator.
Having a stronger finance committee, that. But we have good finance committees.
We do.
We do.
And so.
We do, but you don't have much company
Good.
There's two other reasons why we can't do it in one day in Concord.
Okay.
And one fundamental is that Concord voters and participants at town meeting are there to talk and deliberate and discuss and do it. And that's part of the culture, which is not at all the culture in some other towns. And second, articles that take the longest time are these citizen petitions. And we have more
Most of
citizen
them, most of them are
petitions.
things that town meeting doesn't actually have authority over.
Right, and, yeah, take a look at this year's warrant. I mean, they will be a lot of time. Most towns have very, very few, if any,
Right.
citizen petitions.
So we also have no control over them.
Right.
So-
No, but we
we
can
don't.
group them together, so people that don't care about them don't have to show. And the ones that care about the budgets and everything else, show up to those.
Okay, but so here's the thing.
A lot of the citizen petitions.
Sometimes,
But they relate to the other.
yeah, sometimes it might be a leaf blower ban.
I
Okay, just
understand
saying.
But again, we can't please all, if we're trying to
Yeah.
please families and bring them out, which I think is laudable. Put together the articles and we said the high interest ones first.
You know, there are some towns that put all of the citizen petitions in the same place in the warrant, just put them all at the end.
Exactly.
We tend to organize them topically, so that if you got a citizen petition that's a zoning article, it's in with the zoning articles, or if it's a citizen petition that's an appropriate, like we want a sustainability director, we put that in with the town budget articles, so, and, thematically, it seems like that kind of makes more sense for us than to push them all to the end, especially if one of them is banning leaf blowers, right, so.
The only other question I have is, and maybe you were saying this, we do tend to have more articles than everybody, and I know some of them are citizen petitions, but there must be like a minimum number of articles that we have every year, right? Because we've got,
No, she's saying what's the minimum required?
not even required, I mean, like, there's probably, cause there's the budgets, there's probably a certain number, but we tend to have. I guess I'd be curious to know if the number of articles has been steadily increasing over the years and if that's relevant.
Yeah, so.
Not necessarily. No.
It kind of moves between like, 48 and 60,
But other towns have so many fewer, so I guess I was just.
But they have special town meetings,
Okay.
and we tend not to.
Okay.
And I'll also tell you that some towns structure their warrant really differently. So I had reason recently to look at the town of Edgartown warrant. They have 100 articles on their warrant, okay? And it's because they have each line item in the town budget is
my.
a different article, right? So, and you just think,
How
well,
long did
how
it
do they do this?
Well, a lot of that was on a consent calendar or something, cause they.
I don't know.
Okay,
But
so
on
that's
Eric's
interesting.
first point, I probably told you this before, but our person Stephanie, who
Right.
does the simulcasting, right? She told me that Concord was the first place that she thought about charging by the word instead of by the hour.
Yeah.
And actually, our report doesn't say that. I know that's something we should say. Because we can do all we want, but we have to look in the mirror. If we want shorter town meetings, really think about whether you wanna get up and talk, how long you're gonna talk, and whether the point's already been made.
That actually report says that.
Oh, yeah. If you read that
Right.
report, it should be up front.
Yeah.
It should be up front.
Yeah. Okay, so David Allen, and then we're gonna close.
Thank you. There's questions in the air here, how to treat citizen petition articles. It could be seen as, they're not pariahs, we have people doing it, taking their time. As Karen points out, the time doesn't have started with some of it. Or you can think this is a bunch of all together, put them out in a dump patch and, I won't use the four-letter word. Alternatively, we could say, hey, this is the legislature, you have a citizen actually proposing legislation, for God's sake, actually taking the bit of their teeth as doing what we hope people would do. And therefore, you treat them honorably and put them in the category where they need to go.
And that is in fact our current practice.
That is our practice.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's good.
Can I ask you just one quick question? As you said, treat it like legislature, most legislatures have committees, so you don't bring, I know I'm being really. Is there any possible way to say, hey, before you bring a citizen petition, you've gotta bring it to, the state law doesn't permit that at all. Right, so-
No, but we have a practice, right? You go talk to the moderator.
Well, I'm sure the practice, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether
Yeah.
state law would allow us to say, go talk to the relevant committee
I
first.
think they do, I think they usually do though.
Yeah. It's
Part
a
of the
law.
practice.
It's
not
custom,
required.
it's
Guys,
custom.
can it be a requirement? I don't know the answer, you're saying yeah.
Yeah, no, because the statute is just black and white.
Fair enough.
The board of selectmen, the select board shall put on the warrant
Okay.
any subject that 10 citizens ask them to put on.
Okay.
It's speech, it's speech, it's cool. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. The time is, 8:37 and, I'm closing the meeting. Thank you, everyone.